So welcome to the second lecture, which will be provided by Professor Zoltán Czajlik from Budapest University, and he will speak about, as you can see, Irish landscape transformation in the territory of Süttő. Forget. So you can start.
Słyszę prezentację po-ruski, takie budu rozmawiać po-ruski, okay? I'm just making joke. So, thank you very much to hear me again. Just put, oops. Okay. So, my second lecture will be on moreover a methodological problem. I'm the head of the department for methodology, archaeological methodology and archaeometry in our institute. So I'm working not only with aerial archaeology, but every kind of method, not only prospection, but we are taking measurements, metal analysis, and so on, and so on, and so on. It is an ongoing project, what I will present to you now. This is about the early Iron Age sites, Süttő and Postela in Slovenia. This is a Slovenian-Hungarian bilateral project, and maybe you know that in early Iron Age world, this is the Hallstatt world, we are somehow as in Hungary on the periphery of this Hallstatt world because of the Danube is the end of the Hallstatt world, but Postela is in the heart. It's really like in the center in Hallstatt, or like here in Bohemia you have. So it is a very interesting comparison between these two worlds, the periphery and the central part of the same system, how they have developed the landscape, how they have made changes, and so on and so on. But now in this lecture you will hear not from this aspect, from the classical archaeological aspect, but moreover about the methods. So, oops. Yes. First of all, you have to learn or understand the topographical or geographical situation of the site. We are on the southern part of the Danube, which is actually the Hungarian-Slovakian border now. So this part is Slovakia, this part is Hungary, and here we have the site which is on a Löss plateau. I will not try to familiar with you with Löss plateau. What does it mean? But because I've seen yesterday that you have as well Löss plateaus. So we have the Löss plateau with gullies, which are. So with gullies, which are the natural protected area, in fact. Here, 1, 2, 3 fortified settlement, fortified, I mean in naturally protected. And you will see that the huge area in that direction, this was dedicated for the tumulus graveyards and so on and so on. I'm sorry, one additional information. This is the second military map. And the second military map and the first military map and also the third military map are free access from a Hungarian website completely for all part of the former monarchy. So it's digitalized and rectified as well. So you can use them free. So some further picture about the topographical situation. Here we have this plateau, segmented plateau parts with the natural gullies, and also behind here we have the whole site, which covers about 150 hectares now. And to understand a little bit better the situation, we have the Danube here. This is actually in Hungary. This is the site, and the Danube, and which is important that the site complex itself is surrounded by more or less mountains. Mountains, I mean in this sense, up to 600 meters, which means that the plain area for this site complex is in fact the other part of the Danube. We should thinking always that we have something on the other part of the Danube as well. Yes. And the landscape is not very rich in raw materials, but what we have, this is a big part of them is due to the transport of the Danube. Which means that they used a lot of type of stones for raw materials. For example, in ceramics, you can find every type of stones in small parts. In the prehistoric ceramic, using petrography, of course. And the other typical raw material is the, as you can see, the actual stone carries. This is limestone, which is a quite famous limestone because it was used even for the royal palace in Visegrad in the medieval times. So not that one, but this stone was used in the construction of the burial mounds as well, the stone part. And here you can see the petrographical microscope images with a lot of different stones which were coming due to the Danube. So this is a specific way of transportation. And they used also graphite, which was coming from your country, more or less. But we are quite sure, because we have made a lot of analysis, which seems to us that this is a Moravian graphite what they have used. And it was transported, of course, on the Danube as well. So shortly, let me introduce the history of the research. In the 1920s, 1930s, they have found a local people the first early Iron Age burial mounds, and they have made excavation with the local museum director. And this is the first phase. The second phase was a short excavation of the Hungarian National Museum, which produced a Middle Bronze Age settlement. And then the Hungarian archaeological topography was found a lot of sites around, not just on the plateaus, but a little bit south to them. And then prehistoric settlement, early Iron Age, and also an early Iron Age flat cemetery was found due to the systematic researches or investigations of Gábor Vékony and Eva Vadász. Gábor Vékony was a teacher at Eötvös Loránd University in the last century, practically. So this site complex was, and it is, a part of our research history at the university, and some generations of students has made his practices as well here, so it's quite known. This early Iron Age burial part is inaccessible today because completely in the bush. I've never made a real essay to make their excavation or something like this because it's completely under the bush. So it's more or less the same is true for the Middle Bronze Age settlement, because the gullies are also really almost inaccessible in the bush, and sometimes they are dangerous as well because part of this loess plateau are falling down. So it could be dangerous if you are working there for a long time. You can have an accident because it's sometimes the part of them. And also the prehistoric settlement is difficult to work there because of the special problem that we have in the last for 3 years, I think. What is the name that the people who are shooting for animals? Hunters. They borrowing this land part, which means that for a long time I don't have permission to go there because they are shooting there. This is a specific, really archaeological problem. So, last but not least, we have these green places for the research, and you will see mainly new information about these green areas. So yes, one thing, if you are really interested on early Iron Age projects, we have made an Interreg European project which was published in 2019, but you can access on internet as well. So it's completely not just our site, but 6 other similar sites you can find there. So the methods, we have made excavations, archive orthophotos, oblique area photography, airborne laser scanning, UAV area photography and photogrammetry, UAV laser scanning, overhaul magnetometer survey, and census flux gate magnetometer survey, systematic field working and sampling, and metal detector survey, coring, ozering, and ERT, which is electrical resistivity tomography, last year. So now I will show you systematically the methods and the results. The first of all, oblique area photography. As I did mention in my first lecture, Süttő is not really for this method dedicated. In 5 years we have practically nothing new, I would say. This is not true because I found the places of older excavation, etc., but it's not really something like which is this was a problem for us where this old excavation were, but it's not scientific problem, real scientific problem. So, as you can see on oblique area photography, this is more or less all what we can see from the air using this method. and using the so-called photo 3D survey with archive orthophotos, my colleague László Ruplik has made a quite interesting effort. First of all, he found another excavation, which was at that time, and here another one. This is the older excavation of the university, and of course the most important burial mounds you can find here, even that burial mounds which are actually in the bush. 6 of them we can realize. And using UAV ALS or airborne laser scanning and UAV photogrammetry, we have made a small map of this area in the bush, but unfortunately we didn't have more information using this. The question was whether we can see the circular ditches, but without, how can I say, in their reality. But the method was not enough good, or the ditches are plain, I don't know, or we don't know, so this was not very successful. But the method with UAV photogrammetry and combining the airborne laser scanning, which were made in a 1 kilometer section of the Danube because of the decision of the Hungarian government. They decided to make airborne laser scanning to find out where they have to make protections against the flooding, etc., etc. This 1 kilometer was made, but unfortunately it was not enough for us. So we just decided to complete it with UAV photogrammetry, and then the whole puzzle was put it together, and now you can see quite good the gullies, which are really deep here, and you can see the 6 burial mounds in the bush. This one group, and the second group which was photographed by oblique aerial archaeology, and the third and the biggest group, which I will present in detail. And this 4 tumuli, which was partly excavated for 30 years ago, for 30 years. So the last UAV photography has been made in winter time, 2020. It means during the COVID. So this is the result of the Fluxgate census magnetometer survey, which was quite interesting, because we realized that we have one circular ditches as it was presented on the traditional area photo, but the other tumulus or burial mound don't have circular ditch. Plus we have some baby circular ditches here, which an real interpretation I don't know, but one thing is sure, that these burial mounds are at least double of the normal burial mounds in the Hungarian Hallstatt era. So, which means that they are not so baby in sense of Hungarian circular ditches. These are big, too big, because they are almost 100 meters in diameter. So it's huge, Normal is in Hungary between 30, 35, 40 or something like this, or even less. So this was, and another interesting question is that, okay, but both of them, and actually if you are on the ground, you can't realize, you can't distinguish them. They are both of them the same, absolutely. So what is in it? Are they different in the burial chamber of them are different as well, or just this construction part with circular ditches and without circular ditches? So this was also an interesting question. Please remember for this question. And now I will present with the Overhauser magnetometer survey, which was made on large surfaces in each 3 tumulus groups. More than 35 hectares, and yes, and we have found a lot of circular ditches around the burial mounds, but we have also in this group one burial mound without circular ditch, and we have found some further baby circular ditches like here and so on, which an interpretation is. And then we have decided to make surface sampling for dating, and we decided also looking for the perished third dimension, because if you have a magnetic map, the third dimension is you don't know, but coring is a useful tool if you can combine your magnetic map with coring. So, and the further question is whether we have stone constructions, because inside of this circular ditches, everywhere you can see something which could be here as well and here as well, which could be the magnetic anomaly due to the chamber constructions from stone. And that's why we decided, later you will see it, GPR, ground penetrating radar measurements as well. So let's start with the group Nord. So this is the completed magnetic map. You can see in detail here that this is the detail from here. And then, first of all, what we can see, or what we could see using soil marks, almost nothing. But the second group is quite interesting in detail. We have a huge burial mound with circular ditch and chamber in it. Another one without circular ditches, but with chamber, and a lot of smaller burial mounds.
I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your very interesting question.
And last but not least, the group South, which is completely here on the map. A very interesting magnetic anomaly we have in this circular ditch, and then we have some other which were less roads, because if you are going on a less plateaus, the roads were deeper and deeper and deeper, and these are the ancient roads here in many versions. The actual road is here, so this is ancestors of them. And here, this is the excavated burial mounds, and plus a small part of them. So the results of the coring, so the so-called coring map, first of all, we checked whether we have circular ditch in this case or not, and as you can see, we don't have, using this method as well. The second one, we have made here a more detailed analysis, and you can see quite good that we have at least 2 meter deep circular ditch, which is a little bit irregular, because if I use geometrical characterizations for the magnetic anomalies, it will be not totally the same. Important that I don't like coring into the chambers because of the archaeological material there. I don't want to be the archaeologist for the next generation. Why did you this small what is it, the small holes in ceramics and in construction part as well. So we decided not to touch simply because the most important question was the circular ditch, of course. And the second control method was surface sampling, the whole area on the northern part you can see. So the deep analysis has shown that we have in the area of the burial mounds in each grid as a maximum of 2 ceramics, which is 20 by 20 meters, almost nothing. Which means that from this construction and this part of the site, we don't have surface material. Contrary, we have a lot of material from that part, which is approximately here, the flat cemetery, the same period. Because from the same period we have a flat cemetery. And not only this cemetery, but we have realized that we have a lot of mostly late Bronze Age, but also early Iron Age, other features. So yes, and completed together, we have made on over 90 hectare this kind of sample taking, but not just grid sampling because it was too much work, but we have made inline sample taking as well. I can tell you this, that it was a wrong decision because I would say it would be much better to make everything in 20 by 20, even if it would be 3 times more work. But the problem is that if you have made a huge part with one method, this is not completely non-destructive, which means semi-destructive. If I start now to follow that method with 20 by 20 meters, I will have not the same result. This is somehow a pity, somehow we learned. And of course we can interpret our results also in this way. And I will try to show you the final interpretation as well. But what we have made quite well, I would say, that we have make special marks in handheld GPS for each stone part, which means that you can realize that everywhere around the chambers, which were presumably constructed from stone, you can find the stone on surfaces, which is a plus argumentation that we have to calculate not just because of the magnetic map of the stone construction, but we have stone on the surface as well. So you can see quite well, including that fact that the actual agricultural activity is in this direction going on, which means that you can find the stones far away from the burial mounds, like here, or everywhere in these areas. For this area, I have no explanation. This is true. Why there are so many stones on surface. And we have made also excavations and realized that we have early Bronze Age, late Bronze Age, and late Iron Age structures. For example, here we realize that we have a kind of road, a late Iron Age road, because this was not a simple ditch, but a road with a cross section of a road. Typically, it was for us a little bit strange, and we have found a completely packed ceramic depot, also from the late Iron Age Celtic period, and an early Iron Age structure. Sorry, this is not that one. An early Iron Age, Bronze Age structure here. And another excavation show us that we have to calculate not only with circular ditches, but also external stone circles, stone constructions, which means completely together we have a burial chamber, then external stone construction, and then the circular ditch. So GPR was the final method that was used regularly on the burial mounds. What we have made mostly last year, and with orange you can see all the burial mounds chosen for GPR methods, and we have quite interesting so as you can see, we have not only the burial chamber, but a corridor, a dromos type burial chamber we have here, which is interesting because the excavation for 30 years, they found also a so-called dromos type burial chamber, and this is these both are the easternmost in the whole Hallstatt culture, and this is something which is, I don't know how familiar are you with the Hallstatt culture, but this is something which is coming from the south. Not just Balkan, but you can thinking in the Aegean territories as well. And this burial chamber was very often, how can I say, often argument from a lot of specialists abroad that Süttő is an important site in this world, because not every case and not every type of burial mounds contains such complex burial chambers, and which is
important. Can I ask something? There is a similar, but different, I mean, very long corridor in another Hallstatt period, Hillfort in Hessen. Do you know what Axel is now working? There is a Hillfort, and how they found there, excavated the statue of the man.
You mean Glauberg?
Yes.
But Glauberg, it's a very, very specific one. Somehow similar, you are right, but the problem is that in Glauberg we are at least 150 years farther. It's not the same period. You will see a map with all the parallels for this. So this is the completed interpretation. And yes, the two for electrical resistivity tomography, we have chosen these two burial mount that was seen on the first and here on this oblique area photography, and these are our friend from Slovenia, Branko Mušić, who is working with his group in Süttő, and you can see the implantation of the electric channels here, so it's quite interesting how they implanted on terrain this electrical resistivity channels, but it is also interesting that they have made a very, very fine magnetic map which shows us practically the same plan of the burial chamber with corridor, which means the dromos type burial chamber here. Oops, sorry. And here are the cross sections, which has mainly the same results, that okay, we have a burial chamber with corridor and with because, for example, here this is the cross section in line, and you can see the two stone walls, this one, and between them this is the middle of the burial chamber, if you want. So it's quite easy to interpret, I think. And also we have some essays for 3D reconstruction. I don't know, as you are familiar with this method, did you use here in Czech Republic?
Yes, yes, we do, yes.
Because I think this is a very, very not so expensive method like any other one in geophysics, in archaeological geophysics. The problem was before that it was very, very time consuming to make each channels as it was decided. But nowadays, with new programs, you can change the whole system quite quickly. So it's going on, one burial mound was a little bit less than 1 day. So it's not so, it takes not so many time as it was before. And I'm thinking now to buy for our university also equipment, because it seems to me very, very promising. So, conclusion is an actual conclusion that we have to calculate not with isolated sites, but the site complex of 160 hectare in the early Iron Age. And if we are summarizing the details, we have in early Bronze Age at least 2 sites on the plateau, or even 3 if you include this one, which is a little bit farther. And we have later probably fortified settlement also on the plateau, and then we have in Middle Bronze Age for sure fortified settlement, but also, which is quite interesting, due to the sample taking in line, we have found somehow here a Middle Bronze Age settlement, which means that they used this gully from the Danube, because otherwise they didn't have water. The whole plateau is without water, but I think that they have used these gullies for the communication with the Danube. If they didn't have a bush, it is quite easy to access. It's no actual and archaeological topographical problem. And then we have late Bronze Age, the same way they used, but not in this. It was much bigger, the late Bronze Age site here, and they have used this part of the segmented plateaus in late Bronze Age and that part as well. And my assistant Esther Feyer published this dagger, which comes from this region more or less. So it was published last year, I think, in Archaeologické rozhledy, if you are more interested, because it was for sure coming from your countryside. And then we have, the early Iron Age, which was the so-called the main reason of this research. And as you can see, we have the settlement, we have 1, 2, 3 complexes of burial mounds, and also here we have the flat cemetery. So it's quite. This was the so-called the gold period of the site complex, and finally the late Iron Age. The Celtic was completely unknown before, but as you can see, during the topographical researches, we have found late Iron Age here, and of course in this region. They are mostly settlements, but it seems to me that somehow they reused the environment of the flat cemetery, and they respected the burial mounds because they didn't touch. Here are in this part, they didn't touch the burial mounds, this zone, which we can more and more frequently find in Hungary, that the cells arriving on these sites, they respect as a landscape, as a holy landscape, the area of the burial mounds. We have made such observations in Százhalombatta, in Szalacska, in Süttő, and so on, which is conform with other perceptions in France, but I think also here in the Czech Republic, and this is somehow the term funerary landscape, which means that the people are using the same part of the landscape for very, very long time. In France, from the late Bronze Age to the end of Latin, sometimes even in the Gallo-Roman period, they used the same funerary landscape, and this is mostly due to the area photography they found this mega funeral landscape site. So we have something similar here in Süttő. Yes, sorry. So this is the this is the conclusion for early Iron Age, and plus we have found a totally newly discovered early Iron Age grave, which means that our methods, topographical methods, are enough not only for sites or site parts analyzing, but sometimes even we can find single archaeological features, like here, this early Iron Age grave, which I want to excavate next spring. Actually, it is not possible because it's covered with corn. So, sorry. The summary in time scale, if you want, we have made a lot of radiocarbon data, which are mostly conform with the traditional archaeological datation. And we have made some comparisons between the two burial mound or burial chamber with corridor. This is the excavated one, and this is the GPR. This is what we have found on the GPR data, and it is interesting that this consists 1, 2, 3 rooms instead of this, which is 1 and 2 room have, but the orientation is almost the same. So they are, I would say, in relationship. And yes, this is in detail. You can follow what I mentioned. And also here you can see the stone circle, what we have partly here found as well. So we have also some observations on GPR measurements that we have even the stone circles. Yes, some comparisons, one of them from Dunajska, Lužna, Nové Košariska, just to see that on magnetic map they found the circular ditch, but on GPR they have found practically nothing, which is conform with the excavation data, because they didn't find stone construction. Another one from an example from excavated example from Hungary, from Slovenia. So if you want to have an idea what does it mean in Süttő, a burial chamber, not completely similar, but somehow in this direction you have to thinking. And we have also parallels, excavated parallels from Croatia, from Kaptol, which is an excavation of Professor Hroje Potrebica. And finally, you can see that this type of construction is mostly known from the southeastern part of the Alps here, but we have in Kaptol, but we have in some other, and Süttő now we have a double, and in the Czech Republic up to now we have from Martingolec, Morašice, thank you, and this is the hidden monumental stone architecture. So more or less we are at the conclusion that the burial mound has the main parts, as the circular ditch, the stone circle, and the burial chamber could be investigated without any excavation, at least in the condition of loss, I would say. The second one, for the first view, very similar burial mounds could be completely different in his inner construction, which was, for me personally, a huge surprise, really. And the third one, from part of methodology, it's very important that these methods, which is, I think, over 10, maybe 12 methods you have seen, they have a chaîne opératoire. Do you know what does it mean, chaîne opératoire? You have to always analyze the next step using these methods, and you have to be in a good relationship with the owner of the field to have information before, because otherwise you have no chance. And which is very important that most of them could be repeated. And the semi-destructive methods like sample taking, we have to be more carefully, because they could not completely repeat it. Not like excavation, which destroys everything, but it could be problematic. And the time window and the time need are very different in each cases of this method. For example, I imagine that sample taking, it's a lot of to do on the ground. Not. We have made with trained students 10 hectares per day without any 5-6 people, so not an army of students. But after the processing was at least 3 months, because you have to define each material precisely. You have to collect the specialist for early Iron Age, late Bronze Age, early Bronze Age, etc., etc. So this is time consuming, for example, in this case. And last but not least, I don't know, maybe you have met Maria Hajnalova. She is here, and we started this year a totally new methodological sample taking. This is measuring samples for dating plus environmental data. So we want to take directly samples for radiocarbon data and for environmental data from each tumulus part. It means the chamber, the circular ditch, and also beneath the tumulus, what was before the tumulus was constructed. So this is more or less in advance, and the final reason would be we have a small preliminary results that we have found the late Iron Age millet. Millet, you know what is it? In Süttő, which this is an imagination of one of my friends, that the landscape was not just a landscape of hill forts and burial mounds and so on, but it was an environmental landscape as well. So we will try to make reconstructions. This is for the late Iron Age, for example. So more or less, I think I finished. Yes, so thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Zoltán, for this interesting presentation of your project, which I think was obviously an excellent example of how non-invasive methods may actually bring very, very important and I would say decisive maybe results on how to then we are able, or we have the capacity to reconstruct, to try to reconstruct the development of the landscape on relatively small area. I mean, commonly a landscape project is, at least in our concept, is usually thought to be which deals with more extensive territory. But anyway, I mean, for this place, for this area, we could see very precise detection by variety of methods brought really very, and even for me, I would say maybe knowledge or ideas which I wouldn't maybe expect to be able to dig up. I mean, in this sense. So I think thank you very much again, because this was a very good example of how non-invasive methods in landscape or settlement projects may help to understand what was happening not just in one moment, but how one category of monuments like the burials was developing in one place. So if you have any question, let's now move to you.
Collapsed. Okay, just one remark. Just to have an idea what would be the old traditional method. We have made an excavation at Százhalombatta, which was not completely, but for us with students, 2 seasons. Just one burial mound, and not the biggest one. Quite small, which was partly already perished. So, but we have had stone constructions, as everything what you have seen here. So 2 seasons of excavation, plus at least 3 seasons for processing, which means not even me, but maybe my uncle would not end all the constructions here on the Süttő plateau. So this is in broader sense, this is not only that, okay, we have this method and we can produce a lot of data, but otherwise, this whole territory is under heavy agricultural use. If I don't make this series of methods, and if I cannot make the processing work, I will lose the data without any details. And I think this is a common problem, that we have to make this, because if we are waiting for excavation, we will lose the data.
Definitely.
So this is why it is important not only for the early Iron Age specialist. This is a strong but I think true conclusion. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.